Hey, welcome to another VOD review. Today I'm going to be doing one on a Challenger jungler. It's going to be Challenger Kha'Zix versus the Kayn, and we're going to be talking about some jungle principles and just some basic concepts that you want to think about when you are playing jungle. I've said a lot of these things in the past, but a lot of what I'm saying is either re-clarification or I guess for some people it's new information. Anyways, so anytime you want to play jungle, you always want to look at your lanes, right? You want to see what lanes have push. Usually you can path to lanes that have priority at 315. Now obviously if like bot lane has priority or if top lane has priority, you can path either way. But in this case, for example, Lulu should be able to shove in the LeBlanc with Q. LeBlanc can't really respond, which means that even if Kha'Zix opts to do really any clear, Lulu should be able to respond. LeBlanc can't just be there at 315. So we're going to go into it. We're going to see what decisions this player makes, whether they be good or bad. And I'm only going to cover the early game because I want to keep the video as short as possible. Let's take a look. Starting blue here is fine. Getting a leash from Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger should have the push on Jace, I'm sure. So I mean, obviously, unless he comes late to the lane and Jace gets like pushed first or something, which is fine. Yeah, so we're just starting off the game here, and here it seems as though Kayn must have started Raptors because it seems as though both laners have shown in lane. Now, one thing you can do as a jungler, just to make sure if Kayn did start on Raptors, is to pan over to bot lane and see if they use any mana. You can do this immediately, but you really have a short window to do this, and the window really is there when the opponent team is coming into the lane. And you want to look at their mana before they end up using a spell, because if they use a spell and then you look, then it's like really awkward because you don't know how much mana exactly a spell could be. Or I guess you could, but it's just look before they get to the lane. So here we're going to full clear, and the reason we're going to full clear, and it's completely fine to do wolves as well, first of all, you want to have them reset at level 4 on the next rotation, and also we want to be aware of the fact that if Kayn did start Raptors, even though he's pathing down, we have push in bottom lane, and we have push in mid lane. So we can clear our jungle out, and then we can be on crab at 315, and it may just force Kayn to run to the north side of the map here. We also see that there's no opportunity to gank bot lane. Because there's no opportunity for any skirmish down in the bot side early on, then doing Raptors and Wolves is completely fine. Now let's say, for example, that their bot lane was like super fighting. They were just fighting over and over again, and they were both really low HP, and the wave was like somewhere either towards our end or perhaps in the middle, and it was advantageous for us to gank. At that point, I can agree with skipping certain camps to run down there. But here, because it's a very low tempo game, you just want to play, you just want to do your camps, like go ahead and farm and don't actually do anything too crazy. At this point, you should also be pinging Kayn's location. Kayn should be moving down, and this is something that I tell players to do all the time. And if you've seen me play jungle in higher MMR, you're gonna see that I always do that, where you always want to ping down, just like this, letting your teammates know the start at where the enemy is, and then like where they're finishing their clear. So we're doing red buff here, it's completely fine. At this point, we also want to be panning over to see bot lane. And now, very important, right? We know that Kayn should have incentive to come down here if these laners are in a weird lane state. What's going to happen is if Kayn is doing a really fast clear, let's say it's not Kayn, let's say it's Jarvan, because again, J4 at the moment in patch 11.18 is really popular, and he's very strong in solo queue. Then yeah, there is potential to skip a lot of camps because he doesn't really gain much value because of just the fact that he's much more low economy jungler than I guess Kayn in a way, which means that he can just run down here on this next incoming wave. So what you need to make sure your bot lane is doing. Now I'm not saying go down there, but always look at the next wave and watch if this wave ends up locking. If this wave ends up locking here and you want to do your golems, you should do your golems, smite them at the end, and then kite them towards the lane or your teammates. So then if Jarvan does end up showing, then you can immediately respond. The next thing you should also do, or really just the first thing you should do before what I mentioned, is you should just ask them to drop a ward here, because this is very important, because this next wave is going to lock, because it's unlikely that Aphelios and Braum are going to be able to kill off these 3 casters before the next wave ends up arriving, which forces them to stay in this lane for a few more seconds longer, which is enough time for a potential gank in bottom lane. Okay. So you always want to look on the waves. So one principle of playing jungle is to play on wave states. Now, as you can see, we saw the wave lock. We see the jungler moving down. Now, he didn't ping it. That's the problem. And bot lane didn't ward. So now we know that Kayn started Raptors, and he's obviously popping down. Kayn ends up showing, and at this point, what you want to be doing as a jungler is after, of course, right now you want to be fighting, but we always want to look at Kayn's CS. Of course, right now you want to just make sure if you can try to get a potential return kill. Again, really good counter gank by Kha'Zix. And now we're just shoving out the wave. Teleport comes in. I think Swain is running TP, right? Yeah, Swain's running TP. That's obnoxious. Yep, they're just forcing. And now what's essentially happening in the game is these three players are playing for the wave. They want to make sure this wave is under tower so that Kha'Zix can then take his clear, or Kha'Zix can move up to the, what do you call it, the Scuttle Crab. Well, actually, doing golems here would actually be pretty ineffective because then Crab is up and you have Prio in bottom. The only downside is your bot lane wants to recall. Lulu should have priority and Crab should be an option, but in this game it doesn't seem like that's going to be possible considering bot lane is coming off of a reset. But yeah, like this is really awkward now, right? Because Kayn's going to show up here. Okay, LeBlanc's going to show up here. And now it's a Kayn versus LeBlanc. Kayn and LeBlanc versus a low HP Aphelios without mana and a Braum who really wants to just get a reset off. So right now, Lulu should have shoved the wave. Okay, it seems like Rakan is also recalling, so it seems as though we end up getting it. Okay, so it seems like Rakan ended up resetting. Now, I haven't watched the game. Oh, Rakan's really low too. Hold on, maybe this decision is actually okay. So my issue with this decision is that yes, it's correct to get the crab eventually, or in most situations you should be able to get crab here. Lulu should have just priority in the lane. The fact that Lulu has no prio in the lane is a little bit obnoxious, but it's completely whatever, I guess. Now, I thought Rakan was a little higher HP. Rakan's actually pretty low himself, so now it doesn't become that bad because now Swain's locked under tower and Kayn is actually 1v3 technically. And even if LeBlanc comes in, Aphelios is also here, so although he's low HP, there's still response to, there's still, you know, some form of response. Now here, you're going to ask yourself, what should we do after the crab? Right, now the crab take was a bit awkward, but that's because of the skirmish down in bottom lane. Now here, as jungler, you don't want to go to your bottom side camps. It's much more effective to just take this crab and then look to recall and then run straight to your raptors or run straight to your golems here. So let's see what this guy does. Yep, you just want to run straight up to straight up to the next crab here. And then after this, so it seems like the, sorry, I apologize, it's actually 4:30, so I'm an idiot. The clear is not to recall after this. The clear after this is to just take this camp. You can then eat this because we start at top side, and then what you do is you can reset, and then you can run straight to your raptors and clear all of your bottom side jungle out. And the reason you want to do this is because this wave will then push back, and it'll potentially be in a state where maybe you can gank it. But we know that Kayn's raptors are also up. Now the reason we don't want to invade Kayn's raptors, even though they're up right now, is because LeBlanc has control in the lane and Lulu's off of a recall. Now if Braum was moving up, and let's say that Lulu's in lane and Lulu is pushing in, yes, there's incentive to go into Kayn's raptors and try to counter them, because then Kayn's only route is up to top side here, because he's sitting at 21 CS. He's pretty doomed right now. But this is up, this is spawning, and then these will be up very soon as well. Which means that now we're just going to take Romp, we're then going to take Wolves, and now we're going to ask ourselves, what item do we require? How are we going to itemize? If we're going to itemize in a way where we're going to take these two camps and then take a recall, taking a bot side fight is going to be really inefficient, because by the time we're bot side, Kayn is also going to be bot side. We're always tracking where the enemy jungler is. So because Kayn's going to be bot side and we're going to be bot side, and Kayn will be coming off of a reset most likely, it's not effective to take a fight. However, if we're looking to take these two camps and we're just going into an item build that isn't that economically demanding would be the right word, then yes, we're going to come down to bot side. If this wave is pressing back into the enemy, then we could actually counter it by doing golems. Otherwise, we can just go into raptors and golems and then pap down, and then we can look to try to defend. Ideally, though, it would be a lot effective. It would be a lot more effective to just go down here and then clear up, but it really just depends what happens. So here, just do Gromp. Just do Gromp here. And now wolves will be spawning very soon as well. And then as wolves spawn, we want to think about, how are we going to itemize? Do we actually require raptors? Do we actually need the golems? And at this point, as a jungler, you always want to be thinking about pinging where the opponent is. Because right now, we see this next wave incoming. If we want to ask ourselves, can Heimerdinger, well, obviously, yeah, he has the mana and the HP to do this, but you always want to ask yourself, can our laner crash this wave into the tower and get shove out? Because Kayn is topside right now. So Kayn has initiative to potentially gank top lane, but we want to make sure that this guy has shove out. Now in this situation, no, Kayn cannot gank top lane. But in a different game, where this isn't Heimerdinger into Jace, maybe this is a different matchup in the wave state. Maybe this is like Aatrox into Jace, and Aatrox can't just shove the wave out without taking a ton of damage and losing resources. Then yes, going to the bot side clear is not effective. At that point, we should cover top lane, and then we should recall on top lane. Now the problem with that is it actually it deters from itemizing as effectively, because we're not going to have the gold from these two camps, but it protects your laner, right? And so that's just a sacrifice you have to do as a laner. You have to be up for your laners to get the shove out. Now here, of course, in this situation, there isn't a necessity to get the shove out. Kayn obviously is in the top hand side of the map. He's not gonna like gank top, and ganking mid I don't think he'll do either, because it's pushing back into Lulu here. Rakan's moving up for a gank, but I don't think that this roam will really work. So at this point, again, we can choose to recall after this camp, or we can choose to just clear down. That depends on what we want to buy. I'm not sure what this guy's going to do. I don't even know what Kha'Zix is usually wanting to build, component-wise. So he decides to take the recall, and now Kayn should be pathing down. Oh, okay, I guess he flips it up in top lane, which is really stupid. So as you can see, Heimerdinger got the shove out, which means that this wave is now pressing into the opponent, which means that Heimerdinger has no business walking up to the lane. He can just let the lane come into him. A gank, for this ever to work, would really require Heimerdinger to like intentionally feed the lane or do something really stupid, and so it's just not logical for Kayn to go for this gank. Of course, as we see, the gank doesn't work. Heimerdinger retains his flash, and now here we opt to do golems, which is fine, and now we're going to move up to raptors after this. There is also a world where potentially we can take this camp, and then with priority, if our bot lane is intending on staying, if Lulu has priority, we could play for the smite fight on his Gromp, but it's really risky considering Aphelios is low HP, Lulu has no prio, and the enemy bot lane will be responding to the fight first with an item recall. Okay? These are all things you want to consider. Doing the dragon here is also an option, but the only reason dragon here is good. Now, let me actually talk about this before we go more into the game. Now, the only reason I agree with the dragon here, actually, I don't agree with the dragon here. Let me clarify. If you do dragon here, sorry, I didn't even notice this myself in the video, but if you do dragon here, your bot lane's off tempo and your mid lane has no response to actually roam down. Now, taking an ocean dragon, if situations were different, let's say, for example, that enemy Kayn is topside, and, you know, everything is fine up here. You have strong side bottom, Lulu is pushing in, this is pushing in. Yes, doing a dragon with no camps up is acceptable. And the reason for that is because it's an ocean dragon. But ideally, you don't want to take early dragons, because if you can, so let's number the dragons. So there's dragon 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you're able to make plays, instead of doing the dragons on dragon 1 and dragon 2, if you're able to get plays that give your team an advantage, then theoretically speaking, the opponent team can't respond for 3 and 4, which actually help you get soul, etc., and all that stuff, right? In addition, a lot of the times, taking the first 2 dragons in the game actually loses you tempo. This is something that you're going to see me talk about in the Ivern video that I actually just released a few days ago, where I tell the player not to do dragon. Twitch chat, of course, was saying do dragon, and then I had to explain. I went in a lot of detail as to why dragon is actually a really bad thing and why it puts you off of tempo. Ocean is usually really good early on. The reason for that is because the sustain is really nice, but really only do it if it's like more of a luxury kind of thing you can do. But then again, taking Earth or taking the Infernal Dragon isn't really valuable, because the stats that it gives you are very negligible. The lower rank you are, the less they really matter. So then, you know, you don't want to compromise your own tempo and your own ability to actually control the game as a jungler. Now here you obviously, again clarifying, you don't do the dragon here, but you could cover bot lane as we see this guy doing, because Kayn is bot side. You could also path up the top side where you take your Raptors, but here you want to make sure your bot lane gets shove out. If your bot lane doesn't get shove out and gets ganked, it's really dangerous. As you can see, your bot lane needs to get shove out. Right, so look at the wave here. The Rakan coming is irrelevant. Right, whether Rakan comes or not is none of my concern. Right now, the opponent bot lane is trying to, like, your bot lane wants to kill off like all of these minions and put these minions into the tower. Now, of course, if the cannon was dead, this isn't required, because now 3 casters actually means the wave is slow pushing, and Aphelios and Braum can go ahead and take a recall while Kayn can't do anything in bot lane. Then what you do is you just clear upwards down to your blue buff, or up to your blue buff, and you play the game based on whatever you see right afterwards. Now here Rakan obviously shows, so a bit of trade happens, and now as you can see, we're just focusing the minions down. This is really dangerous what he's doing. And the reason this is really dangerous is it's kind of common sense. Kayn is obviously down here. Don't take an extended fight under tower when Kayn can counter. This is extremely troll. Like, this is so weird. He's gonna lose this really badly for his team. Yep. So obviously Braum loses his life. Actually works out. It actually works out. I guess they're really low HP. Let me see how this fight gets played out, because this is not a good decision, but it works out. The reason this isn't a good decision because Kayn will come down here, and depending on how much investment there is, it could actually mean just death for somebody, you know. So Kayn comes in, uses his abilities. Rakan doesn't have to get hit by that Q. LeBlanc should teleport in now. LeBlanc should just be TPing in right now, unless she doesn't have TP or something. Lulu comes in, and then Lulu ends up kind of saving the game, because Aphelios gets doubles, but we don't really know if LeBlanc's running TP or not, which she is, and so is Jace. Which we don't know if they have TP or not, and I don't know if the enemy, if the team is tracking it, which means that if a response gank was to happen, things could get really messy. So now, sure, if the opponent has no teleports, making a play like this, if you're coordinated with your mid laner and his lane state isn't like completely weird, is acceptable, right? But most of the time if you're not in challenger, and this type of coordination may not be like there. Also, I don't even think these guys are doing it on purpose. I just think LeBlanc and Jace happen to not have TP because nobody's actually typing in chat or anything. This is solo queue, it's not scrims or anything. Which means that this play is really flipped. You can't make a play like this because Kayn will come down. You know he's down here. Of course, something like this is completely okay if the opponent jungler is topside, right? But because we're an experienced jungler, and the more time you play jungle, you're gonna know where the opponent is mostly all the time, right? In very rare cases and circumstances will you not be aware of where the opponent jungler is. As long as you're playing in like master or like diamond or like even in platinum in some cases, you will be aware of where the opponent jungler is. Not only in like silver and gold do people just run around, but regardless, if you're playing in those brackets, don't make plays like this. It's unnecessary. It's not safe. Even if it provides you a positive result, it's not safe. I don't think LeBlanc wins this, sadly. Yep. I mean, Kha'Zix can actually kill her, but we don't know who's behind her because you can Q smite this. Wait, that's obviously a clone. I mean, she's not going to int into you. Anyways, now Kayn's going to run to topside. So he should be topside soon. And it seems like we're going to play up for his topside. And the reason we're playing for his red again is because first we know that his topside camps are up, right? Just based on his CS, based on the tempo of the game. You don't even have to even count CS. Now, sometimes when I'm in game, whether I be playing in master lobbies or like whatever, right? Or like diamond lobbies even, I don't usually count CS that often. Mainly because you can just pace the game. You can kind of slowly understand the tempo of the game. This is something that more experienced junglers can start gaining, you know? As you play more and more jungle, you'll start realizing that CSing and counting the CS isn't as necessary because you can just start understanding the tempo and like you can time the game. An example is like if you asked me to wait for 5 minutes and then call you after approximately 5 minutes without looking at the clock, I can use that like kind of that approximate to determine when 5 minutes would go by. It's the same thing with jungle, right? So you'll know that by X timer, Kayn will be top side, and then by Y timer, he'll be on the south side or the bottom side or the you know, whatever, right? And then just off of this, you can start timing it. So at this point, Kayn is top side, right? Kayn has 34 CS. Of course, you can still count his CS, right? He has 38 while doing Raptors, he has 42 and then 46 doing his Golems, and his top side camps should be about 46 CS, I think, right? Which means that now we can play for his top side, and the reason we can play for his top side is because Heimer has push lead, right? We have Shove in top, and we have Braum with Roam Timer. Bot lane wave is coming in, so this is a really good timer for when Braum can come down. Kayn isn't going to just dive bottom lane because Kayn is top side. If Kayn decides to dive bottom lane and eat and takes Aphelios out, Kayn loses his entire top side, and now Braum and the mid laner along with Kha'Zix can make a cross map play up in top lane. So even though Aphelios may lose his life, maybe even die to maybe even like die and lose a few waves, or he just lets it kind of just backs off and loses waves, ideally what a really good ADC would do if he was able to read this, at that point would be completely nullified through the cross map play you would make up in top side, right? Now that's not relevant here. Here we have Braum with us, we have Lulu with us, so here we're just going to go up to Kayn's top side jungle, and then because we have Shove in top, we're just going to counter his top side. He can't really do anything against us. So Kayn should be here, 100%. We're going to see him in a second. There he is. And now we're just looking to take his top side. Now, I mean, what Kha'Zix is doing after this is completely, you know, he's just following the same principles and ideas that he was doing from like the early game, and now translating this to the later stages of the match, right? Of course, now with more variables, because now he has more items. There's more opportunities to do more damage and like abilities, etc., right? Really just the same way you would play out levels 1 to 3 is like the same way you would play out levels 3 to 5, 5 to 7, etc. The concepts and principles, they don't change. Only the small variables that come along with leveling up and as the game evolves will obviously, you know, change, and you can just, you know, just use your common sense and start taking account into those. But yeah, anyways, so this is how you jungle, this is how you think about jungle. And one thing I urge you guys to do, if you are a low elo jungler or even like a mid high elo jungler, I would recommend watching jungle videos, predicting what the opponent tries to do, and then seeing if they do it right or not, if they do it or not. And then eventually, the more experience you gain, you're going to start finding holes inside of like players who are challenger or pro players, or like really top level players. You'll see mistakes that they would make, but you must first develop the principles and the idea of how to play jungle, and then eventually you can start applying it to when you watch games. Okay, and then of course you can apply to your own games, and ideally you want to climb elo, because that is eventually the goal, right? Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.